The Vietnamese War. To understand the Vietnamese War, there are some basic principles and assumptions that we need to understand, without which all the rest becomes impossible to understand. Firstly, when we speak of Vietnam, we are speaking of a distinct ethnicity, a country, a people whose history goes back thousands of years. Secondly, through most of that history, the Vietnamese have struggled to be independent of foreign control. Most of that history, if one looks at a map, that large foreign control that they would fight against would be China, just to the north of them. This we need to understand, because without it, we cannot understand at all how the United States would come to lose against a power a fraction of the size and might of a country like the United States. Let us then jump into the modern era to the 1880s. Europe is expanding around the world, creating empires, conquest, divvying up continents like Africa, for the dual purpose of this modern imperialism of finding new markets, new sources of raw materials. In the case of an area south of China called Indochina, which was made up of the countries of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, the raw materials, well, a host of mineral wealth: chromium, tungsten, tin, but by far the most important was rubber, without which one cannot imagine an industrial society operating. Rubber tree plantations. So the French marched into Indochina, called it French Indochina, and took it over as part of the French Imperial Empire in the 1880s. What was the French treatment of the Vietnamese like? It was harsh. Speak French, write in French, or you go to prison. Economic exploitation. Harsh enough. The next moment, turning point of this history, comes at the end of the First World War. France is one of the victors in that war against Germany. And at the treaty meeting at Versailles after the war, you have the victors meeting, namely the United States, France, and England, among the most powerful of the countries. President Woodrow Wilson of the United States established grounds for this peace treaty in something called the 14 Points. And one of those points was calling for the self-determination of all the peoples of the world. Very important point. In Paris at this time, this is 1919, was a student studying there from Vietnam. And he puts it to Wilson, to the Versailles Conference. Well, if you're serious about this point of self-determination, independence of all the peoples of the world, then what you're calling for, it seems to me, is the end of all the colonial empires, the end of imperialism, and the independence of all of these colonized peoples, including us Vietnamese. They threw him out. They did not want to hear this. Not the French, not the Americans. This young man's name was Ho Chi Minh. This is an important turning point, because what is suggested to Ho was that the peaceful, negotiated way to independence was not acceptable to the imperial powers. He tried it their way. He calls Wilson on that point that Wilson himself wrote, to no avail. France is not about to give up its empire in that part of the world. The lesson he learned will come back to haunt the West, because the next time we see Ho Chi Minh is in the 1930s, leading a guerrilla war against the French in Vietnam. Now then,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?